Bushwick Collective was created by Joe Figueroa in 2012, showcasing the first mural on Troutman Avenue. Joe, a Bushwick native born in the 80s, grew up around the fires, crime, and violence that once dominated the neighborhood. However, after losing both of his parents, Joe was looking for a way to release his painful memories that were associated with growing up in Bushwick. One wall after the other, he began to beautify his neighborhood, and although he is not an artist himself, he brought artists together to better his neighborhood. Within the past few years, Joe has brought in an array of local, national, and international artists to collaborate on several blocks of walls in the neighborhood, creating a free hotspot for tourists and members of the new community to come visit. The Bushwick Collective has gotten so popular that it has received attention from Complex, Tribeca, and the New York Times. Street artists, city officials, and locals have praised Joe for creating a free space where graffiti artists can express themselves, while people enjoy their art. Some even credit Joe for helping clean up the neighborhood. But the Bushwick you see today was not always this pretty. During the Great Depression, Homeowners Loan Corporation was given the authority to deem certain neighborhoods worthy or unworthy, a practice known as redlining. This, along with white flight, created racial and economic segregation and left Bushwick, like many other neighborhoods, in a broken state of unsustainability. Beginning in the 70s, Bushwick experienced massive depreciation in the treatment of their neighborhood. There were many fires caused both by the landlords and the physical state of the apartment buildings. And the historic blackout in 1977 caused hundreds of people to break into stores along Broadway, taking furniture, TVs, food, and everything else they could carry. But around the same time, a young artist known as Top Cat 126 introduced graffiti tagging to New York City. This brought a wave of graffiti writers to the city who started off by tagging their names in subway cars and areas under the train tracks, and later transitioned to tagging private buildings and any free wall they could find. The act of tagging and graffiti art in general became a way in which graffiti writers and artists could make their mark in the city. But to others, the concept of graffiti meant something else and was also often racialized. In a New York magazine in 1973, Richard Goldstein categorizes the illegal act as being popular amongst working class teenagers, specifically the Latinos and African Americans in Washington Heights, the Bronx, and of course, Brooklyn. So Bushwick was really experiencing a combination of neighborhood turmoil and an art movement. It wasn't until the late 80s when the NYPD placed crime-fighting approaches to bring about their conception of order to the neighborhood. And in this included a city and state legislation against graffiti. On July 11, 1995, Mayor Rudy Giuliani passed the Executive Order No. 24, establishing the Anti-Graffiti Task Force. This task force was introduced as a vital part of the city's effort to improve the quality of life for all New Yorkers. This task force continued under Bloomberg's administration and is active to this day. Surprisingly, the task force has not touched any of the art done by the Bushwick Collective. One obvious reason may be that the task force focuses on illegal graffiti, that by definition is done without permission on private buildings and public spaces. However, one cannot ignore that the Bushwick Collective acts as a beneficiary factor to brand the global city. Through the course of our class, we have come to describe the term global city in relation to globalization, the process in which economic, financial, trade, and communication sectors of a country become interconnected around the world. So the global city is the main location that hosts these connections. The global city is also a place where investments thrive, and in the case of Bushwick, residential and commercial investments have taken a toll on the long-term residents that have lived through the murky years of Bushwick. So what role does the Bushwick Collective play in creating the brand of a global city? To even begin answering this question, we first must identify the brand that the city wants, which is not one that allows young Black and brown people to tag their artist names in random places. What the Bushwick Collective provides is a completely free, culturally cool, and organized art gallery that by default makes Bushwick a more desirable place to live in. So for my project, I will be looking at the implication of the Bushwick Collective as a tool to help brand the global city. Who is the community that Joe, through the Bushwick Collective, is catering to? What community has he excluded with the collective? And this may not be his intention at all. And most importantly, what does this say about the art that has been criminalized before?